Good evening, everyone. My name is Javeria Kausar, and I'm a first year PhD creative writing student at Newcastle University. In my PhD, I'm working on developing a new form of short fiction that is purpose built to tackle Islamophobia. On your screen, you can see the definition of Islamophobia. It is rooted in racism, and it is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. This means that it targets Muslims and even those who appear to be Muslim. Now, Islam is a religion, not a race, and Muslims are an extremely diverse group that don't share all features. However, certain features are taken as signs of Muslimness, like skin color or language, and if anyone is seen as having these qualities, they are also seen as having negative characteristics, like being a terrorist or backward or violent. In other words, these features are racialized, and people with these features are discriminated against. They face racism. Therefore, in our anti racism efforts, it is urgently important to address Islamophobia as well. In my PhD project, I'm working on developing a new form of short fiction. I want these short stories to be interactive but also print friendly so that even those without access to technology can benefit from them. The central objectives of my research are on the screen. It is to empower victims of Islamophobia to face Islamophobia, to encourage the witnesses of Islamophobia to take action, and to inspire perpetrators of Islamophobia to reflect on their actions. And for achieving this, I'm drawing on three main strands. First, it is choice-based fiction for my form, and then I'm looking at second-person point of view for my tool, and then theater of the oppressed for my framework. Now, you must be aware of choice-based fiction. It offers the reader choices at various points in the story. And at these points, the story branches. So based on your choice, you get a different version of the story. The choose your own adventure books are a good example of this. I'm trying to do something similar. In my stories, the readers will get to explore Islamophobia and the consequences of ignoring, opposing, and even supporting it. The choice-based format helps me show my readers the different ways in which they can respond to Islamophobia and how they work. Then second person point of view means that the main pronoun I use is you. So instead of writing I walk into the room or she walks into the room, I write you walk into the room. And this immerses the reader and the main as the main character of the story, and it makes them feel empathy. Theater of the oppressed is the main focus of my talk today. It is a form of theater that was developed by Augusto Boal, a Brazilian theater practitioner in the 1970s. One of the goals of this was to give the people the means of production, to liberate them from being passive audiences and consumers, and to thus empower them to participate in making the society better through concrete actions. Now, on the screen, you can see an image, a metaphor that is used to describe theater of the oppressed. It has many techniques, and as you can see in the branches, there's invisible theater, there's rainbow of desire, there's legislative theater, newspaper theater. Then on the trunk, you can see forum theater and image theater. And all these techniques they are nourished by the same aesthetics. And the founding principles that you can see at the very bottom of the screen, they are solidarity and ethics, and these show that theater of the oppressed is against injustice, colonialism, exploitation, and any form of oppression and discrimination. At the very top of the picture is the goal that these techniques lead to: concrete and continuous social actions for positive real world impact. Now, among all these techniques, one of the first ones that I came across was forum theater. I came across it during my master's and while I was working on my dissertation, which was on breaking the fourth wall. And forum theater has a really totally different level of breaking the fourth wall. What happens is a play is performed in front of the audience, and the play has an oppressed character and an oppressive situation. And the protagonist is not able to overcome that oppression, and the play has a sad ending. And then the play is performed again, but this time the audience can stop the play at any time, and they can take the place of the protagonist and try out various strategies to overcome that oppression. Now, this becomes like a rehearsal for real life. The other actors dynamically try to still oppress the protagonist, and you get to see what works and what might not work. Now, forum theater has proved very beneficial to many people in many communities, and I wanted to bring its benefits to more people because for some reason or the other, some people might find it inaccessible. For me, for example, I found it inaccessible because it often involves games in which men and women, unrelated men and women, have to touch each other, and this is something that Islam discourages. So I found it inaccessible. And then there might be people who feel shy or anxious, and they feel an inhibition to participate in such group activities, because at the end of the day, theater of the oppressed is theater, and not everyone is comfortable with the idea of going and acting in front of people. So I got the idea of giving forum theater a written form, and I wanted to use choice-based fiction to give this written form to forum theater. And this was a great way of extending the benefits of forum theater and even theater of the oppressed to more people. And I thought that these two have a lot of similarities because both forum theater and choice-based fiction, they involve audience interaction, and both can make the audience the protagonist, and they both enable the audience to make significant changes to the story. Now, these are some of the features that I'm drawing on from Theatre of the Oppressed, particularly forum theatre, for my short stories. First is oppressive situations. As I told you, in forum theatre, the play usually deals with an oppressive situation. So in my short stories as well, almost, I think all of them, they deal with a protagonist seeing or experiencing or perpetrating an Islamophobic incident, and then oppressed protagonist. So in forum theater, the protagonist is an oppressed person. And in most of my short stories, the protagonist is oppressed, but I'm also including short story which the protagonist is not oppressed. The protagonist is in fact just a witness who sees the oppression, or the protagonist in some stories is also someone who perpetrates oppression. So there are two benefits of including these different types of characters. One is that it gives the audience, the readers, a very nuanced understanding of Islamophobia. They can explore it from different angles. Another benefit is that I can achieve my objective, inspiring the witnesses of Islamophobia to stand up against it, and the perpetrators to reflect on their prejudice in their hearts. So I think that including these variety different types of characters, which are not usually the main focus in theater of the oppressed, it helped my stories. And then aware and passionate protagonist. So in theater of the oppressed, the protagonist is supposed to be aware at a little bit that they are being oppressed, and they should also be passionate and driven about changing the situation. But in my stories, I don't think all my protagonists will be having these qualities, because in real life as well, there are many people who are oppressed, but they don't even know that they are being oppressed. And then there are many people who realize that they are being oppressed, but they don't have the courage to stand up against it, because it's difficult to stand up against it sometimes. So I want to include those kinds of characters as well to especially inspire them, because that is part of the objectives of my project. And then finally, understanding oppression takes precedence. So what I wanted to do was look at anti-Islamophobia toolkits and then research that has been done on how Islamophobia can be tackled from within our capacity. And I wanted to incorporate these into my stories, and I think it's a really helpful way of spreading awareness. The thing is that at some point you feel like you need to give people a solution, a concrete solution. But this framework from Theatre of the Oppressed really is liberating, because for in Theatre of the Oppressed, finding a set solution is not the main goal. The main goal is now Theatre of the Oppressed has a lot more features, and some can be adapted and some can't be adapted to a written form that I'm trying to write. But the surprising thing is that when I started my PhD project, I thought that Theatre of the Oppressed was a huge component of my work. But over the months, as I worked on my creative thesis and as I kept writing, I realized later on during a supervisory meeting that the influence of Theatre of the Oppressed, the role of Theatre of the Oppressed is not as great as I thought it was in my project right now. And that was something unexpected for me. I was following my creativity more. I was following my experimentations more. And I think there's a lesson that we can take away from this, especially for any one of you right now who are also trying to adapt something into another form, is that it's okay to let go of the original idea sometimes, because sometimes we get fixated on sticking to the original thing, and it just hampers our creativity, it just hampers where we can take the project. So it's okay to go where your creativity takes you. I hope you'll remember that and be aware of that, because it can be really liberating and helpful to think in these terms. And then there's another thing that I'd like to invite you to do. It's to think about what you can do as a creative person regarding the social issue Islamophobia, or any other issue like racism, or any other form of racism. And as food for thought, I'd like to leave you with this quote of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He said, "Whoever among you sees evil, let him change it with his hand. If he cannot do so, then with his tongue. If he cannot do so, then with his heart, which is the weakest level of faith." As Muslims, we are supposed to enjoin good and forbid evil. And this does not mean that we do something transgressive. We should be doing it in a way that's not blameworthy. I hope this inspires you too to consider what you can do as a creative to change the evils that you see around you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.